Today we are going to talk about Black Swan events, right? And really the title of our talk today is a Black Swan event will happen in your career. And so my question is, through your career, what Black Swan events come to mind, right off the top of your head, and which ones have you experienced in your 30 plus years in brokerage?
37 years. So, the title of this podcast is CRE, the unspoken truth. And I think black swans are the unspoken truth of our industry. If you're going to be in the industry, it is a cyclical business. And so cyclical business means that you're going to have good times and you're going to have bad times. What you don't count on, we all know that the market's going to go up and down. What really is interesting, though, is a black swan is something that comes out of left field. Obviously, COVID was a black swan, but early in my career, the RTC days, where the government, in essence, took over all financial institutions, all S&Ls in Arizona went bankrupt, and the government created an entity to sell all of their assets. So there was a once-in-a-lifetime, event, a black swan, where the government was selling real estate at wholesale prices and people made millions. Unfortunately, I was fairly new in the business, didn't have any capital at the time, did not take advantage of that as a investor, but I did take advantage of it as a broker. And so you'll see now, COVID comes in. If you're in the South, Katrina happened. There are, all sorts of things that people in Dallas, Charlie, where you lived and went to school last year, they're in freezing, temperatures, people were freezing, pipes were breaking. If you look at those pipes breaking, no HVAC, that's a black swan event for the commercial real estate industry because it affects everybody. No one writes articles about it, but you have to think about those as you prepare for your career. You don't want to be shy about the career, but you do want to think about it.
Yeah, so when I think black swans, right, my brain went to COVID, 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, maybe 2008-9. I don't know if you'd call that a black swan or more of just a recession, but those are all just like massive, national, international events. But a freeze in Dallas, Texas that lasts 2 weeks and pipes break, that is a black swan event for that market. And commercial real estate is so local that there are probably a lot of black swan events. You don't hear about them because they're really unique to that specific market, right?
Yeah, I think we're seeing rolling blackouts in California because of not enough energy there. I have a client sitting literally today in their own building where the HVAC went out. We live in Arizona in summertime, and so it's hot, and then the system going down, which caused the emergency lights to burn out. Now you can't get into the hallways because it's dark. And so there's individual events that happen. And Black Swan typically is looked at as a national or international event, like the war in the Ukraine that's going on right now. But it can be your personal Black Swan event. And the way I look at it is there are lots of things that come up. You can, in 2013, as I had my own Black Swan personal event by being diagnosed with cancer, and those things happen. And so you are, all of us should be thinking about how do we prepare ourselves for those, and we can't tell what's going to happen, but we can prepare.
And that was my question, is like, by definition, right, it's like you shouldn't be able to prepare or get ahead of things like this, right? By definition, this is once in a lifetime. You'll never be able to prepare for it. But my question for you is like, what can you do to get ahead of, or at least put yourself in a good position for something like that's unknown that may happen at any time?
Well, as an owner of commercial real estate, you want to have the people who do really well have low loan to values, so that when the recessions hit or some market factor hits, they aren't losing their properties as they decrease in value. As a broker, a mortgage broker, direct lender, we have to prepare ourselves. The lenders are going to do lower loans to values. As a family owner and as a broker, I created a thing during COVID called SPT, which stands for Secure, Protect, and then Thrive. I truly believe the first thing that we did is we circled the wagons. We wanted to circle the wagons with our clients and secure all of your family. And if you have an event, you want to make sure that you're in a position that all of your family, all of your clients that you have right now, and your team. One thing that I did early in COVID, just as an example, to secure my team, came out early in 2020. I funded the entire year of our team's salary and said, look, we're not laying anybody off. I just funded the year to secure them, to make them less afraid of what was going to happen, that they weren't going to get laid off. And so I've now, since COVID's extended into a couple of years, I've done the same thing. I just got done funding. Here we are in September of 2022, or end of August, and I funded 2023 already. So I've continued that practice to let people know that even though we're in uncertain times, we're going to do that. So securing my team, making sure the family was all set up. We were fortunate that none of our kids lost their jobs. Then the second is you got to expand this to your clients. And so we started secured ourselves, and then we started protecting our clients to make sure that we could help them. And there were tons of clients that were having tons of problems. And we just jumped in rolled our sleeves up and tried to help them in any way we can. And we did a number of terminations. We did short-term leases. We did leases where the clients didn't have to pay rent, and we negotiated amendments to that. So that was what we did all of 2021. It was a crazy time. We were doing stuff that made us no money in commissions, but it secured ourselves and protected our clients. And then we sat back and looked back, Charlie, we said, how do we thrive? And that's really the case. If you're truly an entrepreneur, if you're a broker, which is an entrepreneur because you're commission-based, a mortgage broker, there are opportunities in any marketplace. So thriving was the last thing that we did. And we started looking at opportunities to really expand our business.
Yeah, well, I like that. The last one is thrive too, because you're not going to thrive. You can't thrive if you're not secure, right? And if you're worried about your job, if you're worried about your income and your family, you're not going to thrive and go above and beyond or hit a big opportunity. You're going to worry about, surviving, right? And so it does make sense to go in that order. And that's cool. SPT, secure, protect, thrive.
Yeah,
You created that.
And I created it, and we really for 18 months utilized it. I've got it now. I've formalized it. If anybody wants it, we're happy to send them a copy, to reach out to you if they listen to this, and we'll send the copy. But this idea of thriving, we took something that was fairly negative and we turned into a positive. We added a few capabilities. We were able to secure some clients because we were proactive, and we had a great year in 2020 and 2021, and we're going to have a great year here in 2022.
That's awesome. So how, let's get really specific to commercial real estate and the market. How do these events, 9/11, I think, or COVID, like you see the markets drop and people have fear and they're not buying, right? Consumer sentiment goes down. How does it affect commercial real estate when a black swan event occurs?
Well, commercial real estate is a segmented marketplace. So each segment will react differently. For instance, we're seeing now industrial and last mile distribution has been affected incredibly good. Everybody's making money hand over fist. There's in Phoenix, Arizona right now, there's something like 45 industrial projects under construction. It's massive. On the other hand, what we do as a team, we lease office space. People are downsizing. They're working from home. They're doing flex office. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so we've been spending a ton of time with our clients walking through their business, not just because I always say this, look, the real estate should mimic what your business does. It shouldn't be the other way around. We shouldn't go look for a great deal in real estate that doesn't fit what your business does. So we are fixing a client. Like we have a client, I just sent out we're touring them now. They were in 40,000 square feet and they're a tech company and they're going to probably downsize to 8,000 square feet. Small office, take 25% of what they were leasing. And so it's a whole different ballgame when you take that kind of size. Then you're looking for building conference centers and those kinds of things. So we're spending a lot of time. And I think the key word that I want to use how do we start protecting our clients is communication. And it's a lot of communication in a lot of different areas, way outside the commercial real estate venue. It's not just talking about the lease, talking about how they're going to run their business, what's going to look like, who are the people that might show up in the office, what do they do, how do they interact, those kinds of questions.
So the conversation's changing, right? It's not so much financial, maybe it's more of a personal, how does the space fit this company and their goals, their culture they're trying to create. Maybe that was always part of the conversation, but it sounds like it's changing a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, the cultures are changing right now. The norms are changing. People are expecting flex at a minimum and remote on some cases. And how do we operate, and what does the marketplace look like? We started, we have our weekly C2 Voice, which is our blog, the C2 Voice that we send out, and that blog has been going now for 9 years every week, talking about these issues. So we're I think there's 35 or 40,000 people on it every week now, and those people are getting a feel for what real-time changes during a black swan feel like, and we all are, right? We've been all learning it on our own on the COVID situation and the pandemic, but we're learning it on supply chain now. We're looking on delays of airplanes. We're looking at not being able to do tenant improvements for a year, so we have to get our tenants out earlier. And the cost of those improvements have gone up, doubled, in some cases tripled. So it's a whole new world out there. So we're having to spend a lot of time communicating that we didn't do before.
Yeah, and that was one of my other questions I had was, so when it comes to communication, you said it's something you didn't do as much before. How has that changed? And maybe COVID has been a catalyst in the change. And like, I know, a broker's job is really to communicate and really get all parts of the deal and all parties involved kind of on the same page so that the deal gets done. And has that changed, or what's been the big change since COVID, really?
Yeah, it's changed dramatically because we communicate, but we would communicate the negotiation parts of the transaction. We would be communicating how much free rent they got, what their rent was, what options they had to look at. Here's our negotiation strategy. It was all related to closing a transaction. Today, it's all about their culture and what they see changing in the next 3 or 4 years. How do they recruit? What are they recruiting? Who's on the recruit list? Where are they seeing people? Are they hiring 100% of the people remote? So they don't need space in Phoenix, Arizona. As you know, at OneSource, we have 11 people and what, 5 or 6 of them live in different states. And so we're having to create and talk about things that are outside of real estate, but really part of real estate now. We've been able to grow our company with folks that are in different states, and those people are doing fantastic jobs, but you and I spend a lot of time talking about how we make sure they're engaged and how do we build our culture. And that's universal across the board with everybody now.
Yeah. Communication is becoming more difficult, right? You have to put in more effort to communicate, especially when they're out of the office, not consistently seeing each other, not sitting right next to each other all the time, right? And real estate plays a role in that, or a big role.
Well, we learned our own lesson. We had our summit a couple months ago where everybody was in town, and the synergistic thing that came through on those 3 days was fabulous. We're going to have another one here in a couple months. We brought our product guy in, and we had breakthroughs that we would never have had being on Zoom. We're on Zooms all the time with these folks, but we're not getting that connection. So I think a lot of people are running through this and going, hey, Zoom solves the basic need of communication like what we're doing now. And this is a great venue for Zoom. 2 people talking and we're getting a lot done. You add 6 people on there, and our onboarding specialist is quiet. She's not adding more comments because she's quiet. And so we have a engineer who's quiet. So that changes when you get them in the room.
Yeah. And I always think about like Zoom, because I've done a lot of Zooms, right, through demos, and everyone I talk to, it seems, through OneSource is usually a Zoom conversation. Zooms I found are very transactional. So we log on, we're going to talk about Black Swan events, and then we're going to log off. And it's like, you don't get small talk, you don't get relationships. It's just changed. And when you're in person, you get more of that. You get small talk, and you really get to build a relationship in a different way and talk about things that are not specifically the topic that we're going to discuss in that one conversation, which that's really what Zooms have turned into is, hey, I'm here for one thing. Let me get that one thing, and then I'm out.
Yeah, and I think I'm a firm believer that, I'm a relationship guy. I want a real relationship. And so even in our own personal life, because we have almost a 1-year-old grandson, and we get on Zoom and he smiles at us, but he's been here for the last week and it's a whole different ball game, when he's here. And it's the same with our company. It's the same with our people. We have such good people. I like hanging out with them. I like being in the same room with them. They add so much value. And so the culture we're trying to create on our company is way different than we're just going to be remote first and we're never going to see you and you can do your own thing and live in, Seattle or Utah or Texas and it's okay. No, we want people here. We want to know them. We want to get to know them.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so important too with a small team, right? Like you can't hide, right? Everyone's presence or their absence is felt. And so, when someone is not there or someone's not performing, someone's out on vacation, right? It impacts the team especially on a small team, right?
I would challenge your small, it's on every team.
Every team.
And the big teams that are not, you worked for a big company coming out of college and it would, when Eric moved out of Dallas and then moved, it was not the same. It was just a whole different experience when your boss was not there and you got on a phone call with him. You have a good relationship and you knew him. But just think about hiring somebody that you never met in person. And which is crazy because a lot of these tech companies, we're US based. All of our engineers are here. A lot of these companies that are our competitors are going overseas and having these overseas engineers, and it's just the communication's not there, and they're building product that isn't what we think is. We like this made in America thing.
They're further removed from the problems, right? So they feel less of the pain. They're less ingrained in the problems and the culture and the conversations, and so it's like a remote team I think is. But still local or still, US based is closer and maybe more engaged in some ways. And then even in person, maybe even more, right?
I think we talk about unspoken truths. All leaders want their people, I want my people around me so I can see them operate. As we're fortunate to have 3 or 4 of our people that come in every day to the office, and it's valuable for them. They're young. A lot of these tech people are young and they need guidance, and they talk a big game, they walk a big game, but they're very young.
Yeah.
And so they really appreciate having somebody that has, no hair and the ability to kind of talk through situations with them that they certainly just don't have the experience doing. And I think that goes across the country and for all Black Swans, all situations.
Well, it made me think about like the experiment. We call it experiments, right? That we ran at the beginning of the summer, and we hired an in-house intern, brought him in. He was in the office 5 days a week, 8 to 5. And then we also had an outsourced kind of call center, and they do it all the time. They've done it for years. They had all the tricks in the book. And within less than a couple weeks, our in-house guy was vastly, outperforming the outsourced team. And I think it's because, hey, being in-house, you pick up so many different things. You pick up more knowledge on the company, on the industry, and it just makes it more genuine. I feel like genuine, that's something this industry is built around for sure, is genuine people and relationships. And maybe not just this industry, but the world, right?
Well, I think I said this on another talk that we had, that, everything changes in the world. Everything changes with the exception of building relationships. It's not going to change. And this Zoom thing is better than phone calls, but it's not as good as person. It's not as good as working together in the same shop and having the ability to kind of see them on a daily basis and to kind of really grow together.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just communication, it's culture. For Black Swans, right? How do we maintain a culture? How do we keep our families together? How do we keep our teams together during what could be very difficult times for lots of people in other areas, whether or not they're safe in our company because we funded it, but they could have a sister or a brother or their parents who are losing their jobs. So it is a very cultural centric thing. It's a communication, and it's really caring. And we're trying to build that with our team. I think we're doing a great job. We got great people, and be prepared for black swans because they happen every week. On a small startup software company, we're seeing our own black swans.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point. Black swans give the opportunity for culture to be either a huge positive shining light or a big glaring hole. And it's the good companies with the great cultures, they are the ones who are able to thrive. And the companies and the teams or the families, whatever you want to say, that don't have a good culture or a trusting culture, or a caring culture, those are the ones that struggle when there's a black swan event.
Well, we're reading those headlines today. Let's talk about some headlines where culture comes into play. And it's not just culture, it's pay too. But when you're seeing you cannot hire A, B, C, or D, that there's a shortage across the country of whatever, that's one, that's a pay thing, but two, it's a culture thing. There's a reason why people are not working at these jobs, whether it's being a waitress or a cook, and they're always looking for jobs, and a lot of
teacher, right? School teacher shortage.
And again, this is the schools that are doing good are getting good teachers, and they have a culture that fits. They will do it, and the schools that are bad are not. And there are some great programs out there like Teach for America that are putting great people into these tougher schools and trying to create different cultures. But it is a cultural thing that we need to have across the board. And I can just look at across the board and go, look, culture eats strategy for lunch every single day, and it does. Now, you can sell your way to prosperity, which is good, but you can't create culture by just having big sales.
Right. So I have one last question on COVID. I don't know if you had anything else on black swans you wanted to talk about, but COVID is the one to me, right? The most recent. I'm not sure the last day I went where I didn't talk about COVID, right? It comes up, everyone's talking about it all the time still, right? 2 years later, 2.5 years later. And so my question is really related to commercial real estate, like to bring it back to the industry. Where are we since COVID? And what lingering effects are we? Obviously, you talked about the changes, the industrial changes versus the office, how those different asset classes are either thriving or kind of, maintaining or maybe shrinking. But what other lingering effects or other big changes have you seen in the industry since COVID?
So I think if you look back, and we can look back now at COVID fairly with clear 2020 vision and say, what's happened with COVID is it was an accelerant. And if you look at what they do with fires, I was up in Elko, Nevada, and they have one of the two places where they teach firefighters how to fight super hot fires. And so they'll take gasoline and they throw an accelerant on it, and it'll double the temperature of the fire, because if you're in like a plane crash that has all this fuel in it, that burns a lot hotter than just a house fire. COVID was an accelerant. The trend of going and buying stuff online was happening, and it was increasing at 5 to 10% a year. COVID hits and it increased 30%. And so that accelerated that trend. And so we're seeing last mile logistics. We're seeing everybody having to we have a little company that makes protective cups, as you know, Nutty Buddy. And the cost to ship went up, and we're having to ship and compete with other cups that will ship in overnight. So those kind of things happen. So that accelerated the trend of people wanting to have flex hours was happening, and employers had the ability to kind of say no, because there wasn't a shortage of employers. Well, now coming out of COVID, there's 11 million jobs available in America today, and there's 6 million unemployed. So there's 2-to-1 jobs. And so the employees now have a bigger say, and they're driving that accelerant. So I don't think any changes dramatically yet have changed, other than what I talked about. People are downsizing because of this flex work, but it has accelerated it. And what we would have seen happen over 20 years is happening over 5. And so you have to be able to get this SPT. You have to secure, protect, and then thrive, and or else you're going to be a dinosaur. You already were a dinosaur. And one of the things I think we're trying to sell to these folks on our is like, if you're not changing the way you do transactions, if you're not changing how you communicate with your clients and execute transactions, you're a dinosaur. You just don't know it. It's coming. And so some people are going to expect it and change, and we're seeing those, and they're hiring us. And some are saying, no, I like the way I do deals, and they're just really slowly getting out of the business, and they've made that decision.
Yeah, and it's like we see the trends, right? The trends going towards more automation, more digital, application software, right? Software is just growing every year. And that there's going to be, COVID was a catalyst, right? There will be another catalyst that just accelerates these trends, but
and it's happening right now. We're seeing inflation, we're seeing higher prices, we're going to see brokers making less money, and they're going to have to look at how they, whether they had an assistant or didn't have one. They're going to look at to automate. When people can't afford, when you want to hire somebody for your team and you can't find them because there's no people looking, or you have to pay double what you thought you would have to, you're going to look to automation. And that's what factories do. That's what companies do. And that's what brokers, mortgage brokers, direct lenders have to do themselves. They have to automate because it's less expensive. $130 a month for a seat could replace 25% of your assistant's time. That's a value. That's a return on value that you can't get in the marketplace.
Yeah, huge ROI, right? If you think about it in terms of 25% of a person's salary compared to a $100, $130 monthly fee, right?
Right. That's SaaS that you can fire, that works 24/7.
Right. Reliable, mistake-free, right? Whatever it is.
That has a great memory, never loses any files. Yeah.
Right.
Good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for talking Black Swans with me. This was awesome. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Great. Thank you.